All right. Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us. I'm your board chair, Aaron Menza, and I'm hosting today's sessions of mAppetites. So while many of our sessions focus more directly on GIS technology and applications, we also like to highlight some complementary disciplines that help organizations make better use of their data. And so today's topic is a great example of that. We're pleased to welcome Carmen Olsen, who will be presenting what is data governance and why care. Carmen is a passionate data leader and analytics professional with more than 27 years of experience spanning data strategy, governance, management, warehousing, business intelligence, data literacy, and data architecture. Throughout her career, she has taken a practical, business-first approach to helping organizations build modern-day ecosystems that deliver real results. In addition to her professional work, Carmen serves as the Professional Development Chair for DAMA, Minnesota, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting and empowering data practitioners throughout Minnesota and beyond. She is deeply committed to developing people, advancing data capabilities, and helping organizations transform data into a strategic asset. And with that, I will turn things over to you, Carmen.
Great. Thanks, Aaron. I'm going to share my screen. Let me know if you all can see.
Yep, it just popped up for us.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you so much for having me. I gotta switch screens though. I think I have the wrong share. Just a sec. There we go. That's better. I'm thrilled to be here presenting to you. As Aaron mentioned, I'm uh, one of the board members of DAMA Minnesota, which is a data management organization. So I want to tell you a little bit about what DAMA is and our data management body of knowledge. This is really focused on data governance and sort of the fundamentals and why we care about data governance and what that is and what that means. And I would love to have your input as we go through. If you have questions or anything that you uh, are wondering about, you can drop anything that you'd like in the chat and I will address those along the way. So please don't worry about holding your questions to the end. Looks like Chris has his hand raised though. Chris, do you have a question? I think everybody's muted. Is that right? And we have to unmute, so I can unmute Chris. All right, Chris, did you have a question? I don't know if you can unmute yourself.
I know everybody is muted to start, so I just recommend using the chat if you have a comment or a
Yeah, if you
question.
have a question, drop it in and we'll address it. So I have the chat up and I will answer that along the way. We're also going to talk a little bit about data management maturity and then different roles and operating models. We don't have tons of time today, so I'll keep it relatively short, but we do offer a more in-depth course for free if anybody ever wants more information than I'm providing today. So first of all, a little bit about DAMA. DAMA Minnesota stands for the Data Management Association. It's been around since the 80s. Minnesota was one of the first chapters. It's a global organization. So there's DAMA International or DAMA-I, and then there's local chapters throughout the world and a different local chapter for many of the states in the US. And Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois are a few that are around us that have local chapters, but there's chapters all across the country. So you're always welcome to join as a guest and or a member in the future if data is something that you're interested in. What our mission is at DAMA is to advance the discipline and practice of data management. So how do we make data an asset for companies to use or organizations to use to their benefit? And how do we help make data a useful asset? We have a few different things that we're known for. The DAMA-DMBOK stands for the Data Management Body of Knowledge, and there's actually this humongous book. I have one right here that is our. You can see it's like 400 and some pages, but this is sort of the Bible for the Data Management Association. They're actually producing a new edition in 2027 that's supposed to be available. We also offer a certified data management professional certification with a few different levels of certification, but that is a globally recognized certification for data management. And because of that global community, we have relationships with a lot of different people around the world. So we have a lot of really cool standards and best practices and that kind of thing that everybody tends to try to follow. These are the different data management bodies of knowledge. So when you think about data, there's data governance is kind of in the middle. We're going to talk about what data governance is. And then we actually have in this book contains information about all of the slices of this circle. So this is our wheel, our DMBOK wheel, and we have best practices and standards in all of these different areas. So data quality, data architecture, data security, data integration and interoperability, and so on. When you think about, for a lot of you that use GIS data, that is just to us another data element. So it's data, whether it's GIS or non-spatial data, all fits within the realm of the things that we as organizations are trying to manage and use correctly and keep clean and keep high quality and so on. So I'm curious to know if you can drop this in the chat. What's the first word that comes to mind when you hear data governance? I don't know if some of you have had experience with data governance initiatives or not, but what's the first word that comes to mind? Can you drop that in the chat? Rules and regulations. Yep. Policies. Policy. Guidelines. Control. Yeah. These are the types of things people generally are generally thinking of when they think of data governance standards. Yep. What else you got? Metadata. Oh, nice one, Bill. Organization and documentation. Good thinking, Chris. Reacted to metadata. Okay, perfect. Yeah. So policies, standards, enforcement, rules, and that's true. Control. That's all true. Another word that comes to mind, or that rarely comes to mind, but we hope does, is enablement. Really, when we talk about data governance, the reason we even govern data is to enable the use of it, to enable better use of it, to make sure we're meeting regulations and requirements, to make sure that we can make use of that data as an asset. So that's the reason behind the governance. Does the governance mean policies and standards and enforcement and control? Yep. But why do we do those things? We do that for enablement. We want it to be easier to use data, more efficient to use data. We want the data to be accurate and give us accurate answers. Everybody's probably seen a map where somebody's house is out in the ocean, and you just know that that weird outlier is because we have a wrong street address for them or something like that. With data quality initiatives, you can reduce those types of errors and outliers so that you get a better, more complete, accurate picture of whatever it is you're trying to look at. So you'll hear a couple terms, data governance. You'll also hear data management. And when I was talking about the name of our organization is Data Management Body of Knowledge or Data Management Association. And there's a little bit of a difference there. So governance is the policies, standards, roles, a lot of the words you were saying that we need to implement to manage data as an asset. If we're going to treat data as an asset, we need to know where it is. We need to know what it looks like. We need to maintain it, keep it in good shape. If you think about an asset like a car or a truck, piece of equipment, it's self-explanatory. Do you give everybody a set of keys to the equipment, to the truck? No, you just give the driver the keys, the person who needs to use it. Do you put the truck in a garage or a shelter, perhaps, to protect it from the elements? You do. You sometimes protect that truck. Do you maintain it? Do you do oil changes? Do you do you refuel it? You keep a record of when it was maintained, right? You're doing all of these things to protect it and to maintain it. And with data, we do the same thing. We need to protect it, we need to maintain it. And so that's why we have policies, standards, roles of who needs to access what, and we're managing that data like it's an actual asset of value, because it is. Data is one of the key differentiators for organizations, the way that they can get ahead or be more efficient or keep their costs down or increase their sales, or any, depending on what organization you're in. So data is that, it's a great lever to be able to pull to improve how you operate as a business or as an organization. So data management is different. Data management and governance are not the same thing. Management is the execution and implementation, the actual activities that you're doing to manage that data, to improve the data, to adhere to the policy. So there might be a policy that's part of your data governance that says that only people in HR can see an employee's social security number. The management is the actual execution of that. It's making sure we have a security role in place to make sure that only HR is seeing the social security number or whatever. If we're saying we want to make sure that 99% of our street addresses are right so they don't end out in the middle of the ocean, then the data management activity is a data quality initiative to make sure we're cleansing the addresses, or that we're bouncing them up against a national change of address list or directory, or whatever it is, to get the right information. So those are some examples of the difference between governance and management. And these are some of the drivers that you'll see why organizations even care in the first place. Why do we care about data governance? Well, not only do we want to use the data as an asset, but sometimes there's just laws we have to follow. That's the regulatory compliance piece. If you're in healthcare, you might care about HIPAA. If you're in the like DOT, or if you're in transportation, you might care about the DOT laws, and you might care about the federal rules and regulations about transporting things across state lines and all of the jazz that comes with that. OSHA rules. If you have employees, you might worry about safety and OSHA. If you have customer data, you have to worry about the Customer Privacy Act. There's a CCPA in Colorado and in California and many other states that have followed. There's the UK GDPR or whatever, where same thing, it's the privacy regulations that you have to follow. So around the world, there's all sorts of rules that your industry might have. And to more easily make sure we can meet those rules, we have to know what data is where, how it's protected, who has access to it, and we have to produce the reporting required by those whatever the regulatory bodies are. So if they require us to produce reports or anything like that, then we need to be able to do that on time in a timely fashion, and they need to be accurate. So we have to make sure that the data being reported is high quality, is accurate, is complete, so that we can meet those rules and regulations. So that's one driver. That's a big one. A lot of people worry about the regulatory compliance piece. There's also the security and risk management. You hear about all the time about credit card companies or other companies that have a breach, right? And your information is leaked. And now somebody's stolen your identity. And that company is on the hook for, everybody gets a credit. You've probably seen, or this has probably happened to you. I know I've gotten the letters saying, oh, sorry, there's been a breach. This is what we think was impacted. And as a, to protect you, we're going to give you a free credit report or whatever. So if if anybody's, or credit alerts, so if anybody's using your information. And the company has to pay for all that. So it's expensive. So those breaches are expensive, and they really cause reputational risk, and might be illegal, right? To provide data to people it shouldn't go to. So there's a data security and risk management component for sure that often drives data governance initiatives. But where it really rubber hits the road for most of us is the data quality and the analytics and data-driven decision making, where you're trying to use the data. This just might be in the standard course of business. You're trying to map it. You want the address to be right, or the coordinates to be right. You're trying to look at a dashboard with metrics. You want to make sure the numbers are right. So some of that is just being able to make good decisions. Everybody's probably sick of hearing about AI. I know I am, but the reality is it's here. Companies and organizations and agencies are using it, and there are a lot of risks in using AI without having some governance in place because your AI can really quickly make decisions and take action and give you answers. And if that's based on a faulty foundation of data or knowledge, then you're going to get the wrong answer real fast. So that's what people kind of say, that data governance is needed for AI governance, and AI doesn't help you get the right answer. If you have bad data, you just get the wrong answer faster. So that's kind of I mean, it's said as sort of a joke, but it's also very true. So if you're trying to automate your processes using AI agents that automatically are going to process data and then do something as a result, you don't want it doing the wrong thing because the data it processed is bad, is poor quality, is poorly described, doesn't have context. So those are some examples of reasons people want to have that good solid data foundation and why we put governance in place. And then cost control. I don't know if you've ever had to do this, but if you're looking up data, looking up a record, you get a form or a sheet of paper from someone, or you're looking at your computer screen and you just see that there's stuff missing. I need to call this person, but I don't have a phone number. I need to reach out to this person, but I don't have their email address. Oh, my name is wrong in the HR system. These are data quality issues, and it's a cost problem because it creates inefficiencies. People are running around trying to get the right data, and they can't just do their jobs quickly. So these are all drivers to why we care about data governance and why it's important for anybody that's using data, regardless of what kind of data. When we talk about this, pyramid's been around for ages, so you may have seen it in your lifetime, but this is a really good example of where we're talking about data management versus information management versus knowledge management. These are all different types of management that you will see people doing. What I'm talking about is truly data management, at least what I'm talking about today. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't also manage information and the rest, but it's the data management that our organization really focuses on. So what is data? Data is the element, like 72 degrees. If if you think of a value sitting in a database somewhere or in a spreadsheet somewhere in one little cell, it says 72 degrees. That's the data element. Now, that's what we're talking about managing. We want to make sure that if it's 72 degrees, it really is there, it's populated, we have it, we have the number, and it's the right number, and it's in the right format. But data by itself isn't very useful. You need to apply context to it, and that's where you end up going up the pyramid. So you start out with good data, hopefully 72 degrees. Let's say that's actually the right answer, the right value. Now, what does that mean? What's 72 degrees? Is that outside? Is that inside? Is that today? Was that the temperature 3 days ago? Like, what is that? And that's where you turn data into information. You give it that context. Room 101 temperature is 72 degrees, or the current temperature in room 101 is 72 degrees. Now we know what that 72 degrees means. We've given it context. That's information. And then we say, well, great, we want to turn information into knowledge. We're going to say, the optimal room temperature is between 70 and 75 degrees for comfort and efficiency. And that's taking that information and turning it into knowledge. You're deriving some sort of insight. And then at the very top, you're using that knowledge to develop a strategy to actually execute some sort of plan. And that might be, we're going to set all thermostats to 72 degrees for balance and comfort, to balance comfort and cost. So that's an action that we take as our strategy to balance those things. So that's, if the 72 starts out wrong, you can see how the whole pyramid kind of falls down. If the 72 isn't right, if it says 43 and it's actually supposed to be in Celsius, or if it's not even the right value to begin with, your information is bad, your knowledge is bad, and you're now acting on bad data. So that's why we're managing data at that lowest elemental level. So when you think about governance and data management, data governance is at that lowest base level. Any questions so far on anything being shared? Because AI is talked about so much, I did put in a slide to share with you data governance versus AI governance. They are different, but they really work hand in hand. So with data governance, you're talking about managing data, those data elements as an organizational asset. You can imagine if you had an AI bot working on top of that and trying to tell you what to set your thermostats to, but the data is actually wrong, your AI bot is going to give you bad answers, right? The wrong, like going up the pyramid, it's not going to give you the right stuff because we have the wrong temperature in the table or wherever that data is coming from. So it's you can see how data governance immediately plays into AI or any use of the data, whether it's a human or an AI use. Anybody using the data needs that foundational data element to be accurate, correct, complete before it can be useful. But in the terms of data governance versus AI governance, data is more about managing that data as an organizational asset. So there you're focusing more on the data quality, who owns the data, how are you managing that data over its life cycle from creation to disposal? Can we trust the numbers? And that applies to data, whether it's in applications, databases, data warehouses, documents, anything you're going to use for analytics or reporting, mapping, anything. That's often owned by business stewards, data teams, privacy officers, IT folks, etc. AI can help you with data management, so that's kind of interesting. AI can automate a lot of your data quality initiatives and give you look through a bunch of data and tell you where the outliers are very quickly and all that good stuff. On the AI governance side, what you're looking at there is you're really talking more about managing the AI itself and their impacts. So if you have automated AI chat bots or agents that are acting on your work and automating things, are they accurate? Are they doing the right things? Are they being fair if you have them making decisions or people, whether it's people or AI, right? You need to be fair. But when you're making decisions about who receives what services or what notifications or what emails, is it fair? Is it transparent? Do we know what knowledge base is being used for these decisions and for these actions? So that's part of AI governance is you're more worried about reliability, transparency, consistency. Can we trust and responsibly use the output of this AI bot or agent or whatever it is? So there you're talking about a lot of you have probably used ChatGPT or Copilot. You type something in and it gives you all sorts of great information. Where's that information coming from? Have you ever gotten the wrong answer? Any show of hands? Like, have you ever used a chat bot and you're like, that's just not accurate? Anybody? That's happened to me. Yeah, okay. Someone else has experienced that. You have to know enough about the subject that you're asking about to catch when your answer is wrong, right? That's like a human in the loop. You'll hear people say human in the loop. It's like if you know nothing about a subject, like personal example, I was dyeing fabric. I have never dyed fabric in my life. I know nothing about it. I asked all sorts of questions and got information about how to dye this fabric and what, chemicals or whatever powder to use. And I knew nothing about it. Like it could have told me I it could have told me completely wrong things, given me the wrong step. And in fact, when I tried to do one of the steps and it didn't work, I went back and said, this didn't work, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh, that's because of this. And it's like, well, why didn't you tell me that before? But I didn't have the knowledge to know that what it was giving me wasn't actually applicable to my exact situation. And I didn't have enough knowledge to know what question to ask to get the right answer. So there's there's definitely a gift to what they call prompt engineering, which is how you ask the questions, but you have to know enough about the subject to kind of spot what's goofy about the answers you're getting. And so you'll see that in your own personal use of a chat GPT or Copilot or whatever, but it's the same in business. Take that, apply it to your world, and you might go, oh my goodness, I mean, think of the things you could break if you have bad answers happening. So that's all about AI governance. Data governance is needed so that the data that AI is working off of is clean and accurate and quality and can be trusted. And then you usually layer in an additional thing called AI governance to make sure you're managing those AI processes so they're trusted and not doing goofy things. All right, I think I just have one or two more slides here and we'll wrap up with, if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. Some typical data governance roles you'll see. There are different, usually organizations will assign people to these roles. So you'll see people being called a data owner. Any data owners in the room or data stewards? Show of hands, does anybody have that role in their organization or maybe know of people who have that role? Sometimes you have to kind of work closely with data, but okay, cool. Somebody knows. So a data owner is typically the person who's accountable for that data, making sure that it's accurate, making sure that it's described and people know what it is and use it properly. And then the steward is kind of a hands-on person. They're the person who might be giving a description of what this is. Well, this is an address. Well, great. Whose address? Is it a customer address? Is it a citizen address? Is it an employee address? You know, the steward is going to put that description in there and say, this is the street address for employees, blah, blah, blah. It includes contractors. It doesn't include contractors, whatever the situation is. So the steward is providing descriptions for the use of the data. And the owner is the accountable party that is probably deciding who can access the data. So if you've ever tried to get access to anything and somebody else has to say, yep, you can do that, or no, you can't do that, that's the data owner. There's also a few other folks in the mix. There's usually a data governance office. You'll see a lot of organizations and agencies now have data governance offices, or a person or group that is responsible for making sure that there is data governance and there's policies and they're known and people are trained on them. And then there's often some sort of executive council and or steering committee that's responsible for overseeing that the data governance initiatives actually align with what the organization is trying to do and resolves any conflicts. So those are a few of the roles that are helpful. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I wanted to pull this up. This shows you that data maturity is a journey and it doesn't happen overnight. It takes years and years, 10, 20 years to really get from like a 1 to a 5, and that's only if your focus is to get to a 5. You don't always have to get to a 5, but a lot of people that I talk to have been doing data governance for years and are between a 2 and a 3. So I don't know if you can imagine where your organization might fit on this. There's some really nice descriptions though about if you're aware of data issues, some standards might exist. Maybe you have a few data stewards identified. Or maybe you have a whole bunch of every data is owned and it's perfectly described and it's super high quality and everybody knows how to use it. You might be more in the 4 or 5 range. So just a little comment here on the maturity aspect. And so just to summarize, we wanted to, again, share with you a little bit about data governance. If you're hearing those terms, it's a hot topic. When I'm sitting in my IT circles or talking with different businesses, data governance and AI governance are on everybody's mind as well as data security. So you'll hear security or cybersecurity is big, data governance is big, data or AI governance is big. Those are just 3 super big topics, and actually lots of jobs in those fields too, because everybody's trying to do this now, is scrambling to catch up. But data governance focuses on the policies, standards, and roles, and data management is the activities to enforce and do those policies, standards, and roles. The whole point is enablement, making sure you can use your data as an asset and that it's efficient for everybody and easy to use. not to just add bureaucracy. That sometimes happens, but that's not the real goal. It's to solve business problems, using data to solve business problems. There do need to be some clear roles and accountability, or everybody's just running in circles and it's kind of a mess. It takes years and years to implement this, but usually people start small and kind of grow out their data governance program in their organization as they go. And there's no one right way to do it. There's some best practices and some standards that you can follow, but it's different for every organization and every organizational culture. And we are here if anybody, so where does a data officer typically sit? Executive or data governance? Usually data officer, it depends on how your organization is using that term. I usually hear data officer more as like a chief data officer, CDO, and they would sit on the executive council or a steering committee above the executive council. If you're talking about, some people might call their data owners data officers. I've heard that occasionally. It's rare. More people use the term owner. But if you're using it more as a synonym to data officer, data owner, then that's going to be, that's just how that organization is using it. Usually when people say officer, they're meaning executive level. So Tanya, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but that's usually a data officer would be like your chief data officer, and they'd be executive council or steering committee. Another question, when it comes to roles and stages of governance, is it the gold standard to have these things identified explicitly in an organization? Like, should I be able to point to a person and ask them, what's your role when it comes to data set X? Yes. That is typically what happens. Usually it's broken out by domain, which is like a subject area. And you try to find the owners and stewards rather than just assign them the role. Like, they likely already exist, maybe informally, and you're trying to formally give them the title that they're informally already likely doing, rather than just picking a person and saying, oh, hey, you're the data owner. It's more like, find your data owners and stewards. They exist. But yes, you would usually, in a more mature data governance organization, you would have a literal list and know exactly what domain or what subject area a particular person is accountable and responsible for. So your data owner is accountable, your steward's responsible, and they would be usually by subject area. So they might have a person in HR that's responsible for time, and another one that's responsible for payroll data, and another one that's responsible for benefits data. And you would have those identified. And you'll see that. I mean, it's not just pie in the sky. Almost every organization I work with has owners, at least some owners and stewards identified. Okay, so Tanya, you're talking about your CDO. Yep, that's going to be in your council then. All right. Do you have any recommendations on where to find more information? Well, of course, the DMBOK. I am giving a class every Monday night. I'm going around the wheel. I've done 2 weeks, and we have 10 more weeks to go because there's 12 slices on the wheel. So that's free. Anybody can join. You don't have to be a DAMA member. And you can go out to DAMA, and I'll put this in the chat, but DAMA-MN.org is our Minnesota website for our organization. You can register for that class there, or you can just go out there to get more information. We offer speakers every month, and we have guests joining those sessions. And then, of course, the DMBOK book is humongous. So you can use that as a resource. But there's a lot of information online if you search for DAMA and then different things. And that will kind of go through the best practices. But I'm also covering a lot of the best practices in my Monday course if you care to join. All right, so that's it. I think that's all the questions in the chat. Anything else anybody wants to ask? Or Erin, anything you think we should know or we should mention? We've got our, like I said, I hear you guys have a conference in the end of October. Ours is in the beginning of October in Shoreview, Minnesota. So we have conferences where you can come and learn more about data and data management and data governance and data literacy, all sorts of things. We've got the trip around the wheel, and we just have, you're welcome to join the organization as a guest or a member. I think that's about it. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Carmen. Very informative. do one last call. Then we have any additional questions? All right. Well, before we wrap up, I do want to highlight a couple of events that we have coming up with the consortium. First, we have a Women in GIS networking event coming up on June 25th, 5:30 to 7 o'clock at Ladonia in Minneapolis. Again, this event is open to everybody, so don't be shy. Next, our conference is coming up, so our call for sponsors and exhibitors is currently open. If you're interested, or if your organization might be interested, registration ends on June 30th, and all that registration information is available on the website. And we are also continuing to accept presentation proposals kind of on a rolling basis here. So if you have a project or a case study that you'd like to present, there's information again available on the website. And then lastly, oh, I didn't realize there was music with that. Um, uh, just a note to kind of keep watch for our next mAppetite session. It'll be coming likely sometime in August. Details haven't been ironed out yet, but should be available soon. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Have a nice day.
Thanks all.